Whenever a new expansion drops, it can always be super scary deciding what class to main throughout the expansion. So many questions would race through your head, like, are they going to be good in PvP with arenas or battlegrounds? Are they going to be viable in a raiding environment? How are they in Mythic Plus? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. My name is Sky, and today we're going to be breaking down the safest classes to pick overall in the War Within based on the class hero talent trees and design overall, gameplay variety so you don't get bored, and the way they are looking to perform. As a player with an actual life, you're busy, and you don't need the stress of figuring out what class is a sure banger. Don't worry, because the comeback kids got your back. And speaking of just being better overall than the rest, the biggest addition for me as a gamer recently has been switching over to today's sponsor, Opera GX. And I know you're probably upset you're hearing a sponsor, but I'm really not trying to sell you on anything because it's absolutely free using my link in the description below. I'm somebody who's on my computer pretty much all day for work as well as my own personal hobbies like gaming, and Opera GX has completely changed my life on my computer. We gave this product a try a few months ago after they reached out to us, and I could not be happier about giving this web browser a go. Compared to some of the other ones, it's a brand new, sleek, and modern design that's 100% customizable to how you like it, and it can be set up within minutes, importing all your information from your previous browsers in just one click. You have thousands of different themes to customize, animated wallpapers, immersive sound effects for typing and opening up a new tab, all while saving you precious RAM and GPU to perform better. Something that blew my mind about Opera GX is that you could actually detach YouTube videos that you're currently watching and display them on your screen at any time, which allowed me to have my own, like personal mini TV while I'm watching or farming gold or doing quests in World of Warcraft. Not only that, you have your social media and other programs embedded directly into the sidebar like Twitter, Discord, Instagram, Twitch, ChatGPT, so you could just hot swap between those programs and tabs in a matter of a few seconds. I personally love using the AI integration with Opera GX to help me summarize some of those long drawn-out Blizzard articles to save me some time to pump out more news content for you guys. On this channel, we're very, very particular about, the ads that we show to you all, because we not only want to give you the absolute best, but we want to give you a product that you're actually going to use and something that's helpful. Please do yourself a favor and just give it a try because it's absolutely free. Go to www.operagx.gg/thecomebackkids2 and dump that boring, outdated browser that you've been using, and let's level it up together. Now, get back to the content. Starting off with what I think is the safest pure DPS class to pick, this expansion has got to be the Mage. You can't bring up the topic of safety without bringing up this class. Every single expansion in WoW, there's always one spec of Mage that is meta and dominating no matter what, so you will always have a class spec option that is performing very well. Heading into the War Within, all three specs offer a very wide variety of gameplay options that are very well designed from the developers at this point in the beta. Now, Fire Mage may be one of the more complicated DPS specs, but I promise, if you know what you're doing, you'll top the meters in just almost every situation. With the addition of Living Bomb becoming a passive tied to your Fire Blast, Kindling to reduce the cooldown of your combustion, and Sun King's Blessing to get you back into combustion very often, the spec's damage is nearly all instant cast abilities while being so explosive that it would just leave you laughing in joy about how much damage you're actually dealing. Once you add the Frostfire hero talent tree, it becomes a true work of art. Throughout your rotation, you will now have the opportunity to add even more Living Bombs to your Fire Blast while also giving you Frostfire Empowerment, which makes your next Frostfire Bolt instant and hit for nearly 1 million damage that spreads to all nearby enemies for like 80% of that. You tie that to being an automatic crit with your combustion, you're gonna have nothing but a good time. Then after that, you have the completely reworked Arcane Mage that leaves the class feeling the best it's ever been in WoW existence, also putting out some of the highest numbers on the War Within beta right now. You're pumping out constant Arcane Barrages and Arcane Orbs for free. You now gain Arcane Charges through your Arcane Missiles procs, and then when you have your heavy-hitting cooldowns like Arcane Surge and Touch of the Magi, you just completely melt packs in AoE scenarios all on your own. The best part about this class is that its damage is actually so high and consistent that you don't need all of your cooldowns to deal absurd DPS. Not only that, your Spellslinger hero talent tree, which allows you to shoot out a ton of arcane splinters, is just completely passive, which allows you to go about your normal rotation, which is very fun for arcane, and deal a ton of damage overall. And then of course you have the Frost Mage, which brings never-ending slows to packs of enemies, heavily controlling the battlefield and being very versatile. You're constantly gaining procs to either toss out, free flurries to amplify your damage, ice lances to split instant cast damage, as well as your very heavy hitters like Glacial Spike, which can AoE for like 4 to 5 million a cast, and then Comet Storm, which just destroys enemies in packs. I mean, this spec is very, very strong in a Mythic Plus environment due to how much control it actually brings as well, and how simple it is to play. You also use the Frostfire talent tree for this spec, which occasionally allows your Ice Lance to actually add Living Bomb to your enemies and give you instant Frostfire bolts to deal massive AoE damage. Very, very solid spec overall. Listen, with all 3 mage specializations being some of the best DPS specs in the game, while all being vastly different in one class, then you have the redesigns of all their talent trees being cleaned up, paired with their hero talent trees being some of the best designed in the entire game. There's no way you can't agree that Mage is one of the safest and sure bets heading into the War Within, and if you're looking for a ranged DPS caster, Mage can absolutely be a perfect pick for you. Moving on to what now could be the overall safest pick in the entire game, you have the Evoker. Not only do you have 3 very different types of specs that are all dominating right now, you have easily the most valued spec in the entire game being Augmentation, which has done nothing but break the game ever since it's been released into WoW. When it comes to Augmentation, this specialization is absolutely mandatory in all forms of content and can be filled and wanted by anybody out there. It's buffs toward your party between, extra critical strike chance, flat main stat increase to increase your overall damage, minor spell duplication so you duplicate your allies' damage effects, increase health to your tanks, mana regen to your healers. I mean, this is by far the highest utility-based class in the game, and it isn't even close. The craziest thing about it is that with the integration of the 2 new hero talent trees, the damage this spec can deal is a lot higher than you would normally think a utility-based class in an RPG should do. Combining all of your buffs while popping all of your own personal cooldowns, you can easily spike into the millions of DPS using Eruption and your enormous burst damage of Upheaval. I mean, this is a very solid DPS class, the best utility in the game, and a great, great class design. It makes this specialization very, very solid heading into the War Within. Now, because Augmentation is so good, Devastation Evoker is a little bit overlooked, I'm not gonna lie, but that doesn't mean this spec isn't one of the better caster DPS in the game right now either. All throughout Dragonflight, Devastation performed very well, but with their new hero talent trees, the gameplay got significantly more fun and interactive than ever before. You pretty much have the option to go more blue-focused damage, which prioritizes AoE disintegration, shattering stars, and tons of deep breath cooldowns resets to just amplify your damage overall. And then you have the Flame Shaper talent tree, which prioritizes, red and fire-based damage abilities to hone in on pretty much way more AoE DPS and increase your damage over time effects significantly with your brand new hero talent tree Engulf. And then you also have their Kindle passive to add even more damage over time effects, so you can see how it gets out of control. Both of these hero talent trees offer a very wide range of gameplay styles while also having their own place in content, making it a very fun and safe overall caster DPS spec in the end game. And then when it comes to Preservation, their support class, they are easily eating some of the best as a healer right now, more than anybody. Both hero talent trees for Preservation are not only great for their fantasy, but also provide a very different gameplay style between each other that can be catered around. If you prefer the way, Preservation plays right now in Dragonflight, you have the Chrono Warden, where it has the Season 2 and Season 3 tier set bonuses pretty much embedded into the hero talent trees, which a lot of Preservation healers, seem to love. Then you also have your Enhanced Living Flame with Chrono Flame, and if you, talent into your Living Flame enhanced healing and damaging talents, you're really going to feel how powerful this healer talent tree can be for you. So not only are you doing fantastic healing, you're now doing really solid DPS as well. Now, if you're feeling a little bit more adventurous, you could play the Flame Shaper talent tree, which amplifies your healing over time effects and gives you a nice little bit of flexibility with your new hero talent Engulf, which can be used to damage enemies greatly depending on how much damage over time effects they have, or just heal your allies instantly for a giant chunk of health depending on how many healing over time effects they have. So the flexibility is definitely there. But listen, all 3 Evoker specs are dominating right now and are very straightforward, simple, and provide a very wide variety of gameplay styles. We all know that Augmentation is just always mandatory and needed in all forms of content, but pairing that with how strong Devastation is and the new gameplay additions to Preservation, this class is performing very, very well overall, easily leaving you one of the safest classes to play in the entire game. Now listen, we've talked about a couple range DPS, but now for all you melee DPS fans out there, we have a special treat for you because boy oh boy has the Death Knight made a very serious comeback heading into the War Within. You have 2 different role types being melee, DPS, or tank, and 3 very different gameplay styles that offer you a wide range of fun. Firstly, of course, we gotta talk about Unholy. It's performing probably the best out of the 3 specs right now, and it's overall very straightforward melee DPS spec that has personally my vote for being the best melee DPS in the game right now. The amount of AoE damage you can deal is through the roof by simply just, you spread your Festering Runes with Vile, Contagion, and your Defile abilities, and then you spread around multiple damage over time effects instantly just with one button using Outbreak, and then you pop all your cooldowns and just annihilate mobs with pretty much a 2 to 3 button rotation. Then once you add the hero talent trees to this as well, that's kind of when the specialization really comes online and things just get silly at that point. You have the Riders of the Apocalypse hero talent tree that allows you to have what feels like an army of minions every 60 seconds to just deal massive, massive damage all on their own. And then you have the Sand Lane hero talent tree that focuses more on like a blood theme, which turns your Scourge Strike into a Vampiric Strike that pops all your Festering Runes and deals massive damage. It did recently just get nerfed, but it doesn't even matter. It's still absolutely broken. Moving on to their other DPS spec, you then have the Frost Death Knight, which recently saw buffs that actually made this spec much better than it was previously in the beta. For example, previously when you had Breath of Sindragosa off cooldown, your damage would just feel kind of low. But now you have your Frost Strike and all the buffs tied to that, and the explosive damage you deal with it to your passives consuming your Razor Ice debuff. It is very, very juicy now and a lot better than I thought. The AoE damage has now become very consistent and very high. The gameplay style has become keeping your Pillar of Frost buff up as much as you can while pretty much just tab targeting to consume Razor Ice cooldowns and debuffs on enemies. And then you just deal massive area of effect, obliterate procs to just chunk groups at once. It is very, very satisfying, very simple. You can swing your Frost Slice talent tree with your hero talents, or you can go the Riders of the Apocalypse route, which I personally like to go for Frost DK. Every minute or so, you summon your army of the undead once again, while tab targeting, crushing your enemies, and then everything is just very simple, straightforward, passive, and very chunky, and it feels good to use Frost Strike or AoE Obliterates once again. And you tie that with your Breath of Sindragosa, you got a really consistent AoE DPS spec on your hands. And then lastly, you have the Blood Death Knight, of course, which could be one of the best tanks in the game for Mythic Plus this expansion. The Blood Death Knight has recently got a nice little rework, and lo and behold, usually when a class gets a complete rework like this, they end up being one of the best designed classes in the game, and yes, that's happened to them. They finally got Gorfiend's Grasp back after a long time of not having it, which is one of the best AoE control talents in the game. You grip all enemies to you instantly within 15 yards, you pair that with Abomination Limb, you quite literally give your teammates a amazing alley-oop to deal damage in an AoE scenario very consistently. You also have Bone Storm returning, which is now reworked and on a 1-minute cooldown and now consumes Bone Shield charges rather than Runic Power and will now, pump out some decent AoE damage and give you some self-healing. You combine that with being able to spam Death Strikes to keep you alive, I mean, you're in a pretty damn good spot. Then, of course, you have your hero talent tree, the Sand Lane talent tree, which gives you even more healing on your Vampiric Strikes to just give you a ton of benefits and buffs. So, overall, Blood Death Knight is looking phenomenal as well. When it comes to a melee DPS or tank juggernaut, good lord, the Death Knight is dominating right now on the War Within. They have fantastic utility with AMZ, AoE anti-magic shells. They have their battle res. They're solid in all forms of content with pretty much all of their specs. I mean, there is no way you don't talk about the Death Knight when it comes to a safe melee DPS class heading into the War Within. It's a very, very solid choice. Now, if you're looking for a class with 3 different role types that can offer nearly all gameplay styles available in WoW, the Paladin is also a very safe choice heading into this expansion. And no matter what, in a raid group or Mythic Plus, one version of Paladin can always be used and appreciated. If you could play all 3 specs and you could play them well, you are in a very, very safe spot this expansion. One thing I will say up front about the Protection Paladin, though, is that it's definitely not the best tank in the game, I will say. But the reason it's on this list for being a very safe choice is simply because it's one of the easiest tanks to play in the game by far. The gameplay style still has not changed that much, even after like 8 or 9 years, but there have been some quality of life improvements recently toward your consecration, to where after you leave its area, you still gain all the benefits from the spell for 4 seconds afterward, making you much more mobile than previously before, in a very big quality of life upgrade. Not only that, the floor of the paladin can be very low and easy to conquer and accomplish, but the ceiling is very high as well, because you have all the utility you have with your blessings, as well as combat res, other abilities in your toolkit, you lay on hands, so there's a high ceiling with the paladin if you know what you're doing as well. When it comes to their hero talent trees, honestly, I was quite surprised with how much healing and damage, passively the Lightsmith hero talent tree was doing. And if your primary focus is on buffing and becoming a bit more tanky, this is probably going to be your go-to option. But if you're looking for some more personal damage and threat control while bringing some really awesome looking visual effects, I mean, Templar was very, very fun, which we will dive into right now, because we're going to be talking about the Retribution Paladin. And overall, this DPS spec has become a ton of fun so far in the beta. You hit your Wake of Ashes ability directly into your hero talent, the Hammer of the Light. It feels super amazing, very satisfying. This hero talent tree ability can easily allow you to hit for like 1.8, 1.9, 2 million damage in one ability, and the playstyle of Ret has become so simplified and way less bloated than it was in the past, kind of how Enhancement Shaman is right now. It just got cleaned up so well. You have so many attacks just passively going off, like your Crusader Strike being attached to your basic attack, so you don't have to worry about it. You have your Consecrate being casted with your Blades of Justice. I mean, my favorite addition to this spec is that every time you use a Wake of Ashes ability, you instantly pop your Avenging Wrath cooldown, which just makes it so easy and so satisfying to whenever you use your Wake of Ashes, you just feel so powerful and see nothing but a ton of numbers on screen just popping off. It feels very, very good. This class is back and fantastic overall. Very super simplified rotation, is easily one of my favorite DPS classes in the entire game. Lastly, with the Paladin though, of course, we have the Holy Pally. What's crazy is that the Glimmer and Daybreak integration into the class that was kind of really heavily, incentivized the last couple expansion has been actually reworked, and all of it is gone. Overall, players are loving these changes, and it's really pruned the class down and made it feel a lot more smooth than it previously was. You have the Herald of the Sun hero talent tree after using, Holy Prism or Barrier of Light, which is quite often, by the way. Your next 2 holy power spending abilities apply a very chunky heal over time for your allies, and that spreads to other targets in the area, which feels very satisfying for the class. Then on top of it, your main holy power spending ability, Word of Glory, is actually buffed to the Eternal Flame hero ability, which once again applies a nice chunky heal over time effect. So when you pair all this together with your capstone, the Sun's avatar, but when you pop your wings, you apply Dawn's Light to enemies or allies around you, and then have those awesome looking beams come out to heal your allies. The Holy Paladin definitely looks like it's on its way to becoming one of the better healing classes in the entire game. Paladin overall, though, has to be one of the safest classes heading into War Within, simply due to how high, the versatility that the class brings. You're also always needed inside a raiding environment. You fill every single role type, and if you know how to play all 3 specs, there's no way you won't have a spot during just about any form of content in the game. Moving on now to the final super safe class you can main in the War Within, it has to go to the Warlock. As of right now, the Warlock is known for having one of the most well-designed set of talent trees in the entire game. Combine that with, all 3 of their specs performing very well, with a wide variety of DPS gameplay styles that are loads of fun, there's no reason why you can't say this is a safe class for anybody that loves a pure DPS caster. Starting off with Affliction, a very massive upgrade immediately is just how much more fluid the spec feels with, the change to Siphon Life becoming a passive to your Corruption, pumping out instant Shadow Bolts with Shadow Bolt volleys, and then, the spec just feels a lot better. The talent tree is so much more smooth. The AoE damage with your Hellcaller hero talent has become incredibly strong. You use your Seed of Corruption to spread your new upgraded Corruption, which is now called Wither, and you pair that with all your other dots, spamming Malefic Rapture. It is so good, man. Good God, the damage is just absolutely nuts. Affliction is dominating right now, and still, after weeks and weeks, it remains on top even after all of the class changes. Now, moving on, when it comes to Destruction, I would say this specialization is known for having one of the best symbiotic relationships between regular talent trees and their new hero talent trees, of the Diabolus talent tree coming into the game. This makes it to where the more soul shards you spend, the more opportunities you have at summoning random demons from the Legion army to come out and benefit some of your base abilities in combat, which it has made this gameplay style very interactive and very different to anything we've seen before out of the hero talent trees. One of those summons in particular can be a Pit Lord though, which turns your Chaos Bolt into Ruination, allowing you to hit incredibly hard with this ability, while it's also an AoE, making it just so satisfying in your class toolkit to go and press. It is very, very awesome. So you're just constantly spamming out all of your abilities, getting a ton of soul shards back, constantly summoning all these demons from the Legion, amplifying your base class toolkit to make all these abilities feel a lot better and more satisfying to use. And the gameplay overall just is so much more fluid and fast-paced than ever before for Destruction. And then lastly, of course, you have Demonology when it comes to the Master Summoner. I'll admit this class does have a bit of a learning curve, and it's one of the hardest class specs to play in the entire game, but it is just as rewarding if you know what you're doing. Like Destruction, this class does primarily use the Diabolist talent tree a little more often than not, simply because it just performs just as well as Hellcaller and just fits the theme of Demonology so much better. The concept is the same thing, where the more soul shards you spend, the more opportunities you have at summoning other demons, and if you don't know, Demonology loves that sort of thing to amplify those demons, so you're going to have a wonderful time dealing damage. You're summoning constantly Hands of Gul'dan, you're getting your Demonic Tyrant out, you're amplifying their damage, the rotation is a lot better, the talent tree is a lot better. This spec is looking fantastic so far. Overall, an incredible class fantasy on your hand, 3 DPS specs that are performing very, very well in all forms of content. The Warlock is easily one of the safest classes you could pick in the entire game, and with how dominant range DPS is so far in the War Within beta, this even pushes Warlock even further on the list in terms of viability. Before we go, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you all so much for watching our previous videos, like the best DPS specs you can main in War Within, that just got over 50,000 views yesterday, as well as 5 super fun classes you could play that broke over 25,000 views. If you guys are interested, please go check out those other videos. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, hope you enjoyed the video. Listen, if you guys enjoyed the content, we have a ton of other videos to help you get through the War Within, like these 2 right here. And since you're already here, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button to join the Combat Kids family today, because every subscriber matters. Thank you all so much for enjoying the video. I'll see you in the next one.